All right, everybody take a deep breath. I'm not going to be talking about underwriting today. I'm not going to be talking about loss ratio or claims management, accounting, sales. Today, we're going to be talking about you. That's what we're going to talk about. Now, this whole session is designed ultimately, I think, to obviously have an impact on our business based on what you decide to do, but ultimately, this session is something for you to take on, something for you to do, should you wish to do it. I'm a much older individual than most of y'all, and had the good fortune to have people in my life that challenged me to do some of these things a long time ago. And so I was able to take these steps and that I followed, and I wanted to share some of them with you when it comes to finding purpose. So today, what we're trying to do is to encourage you to follow steps, a roadmap, to discovering and acting upon a purpose for your life. There's this reality that life is very short. So I'm 53 years old this year, and based on averages of how long the average male lives, I have 24 years left before I kick the bucket. And I will die sooner or later. So, life is short. It's time to get busy making sure that you are finding the purposes for you and your life, because you're running out of time. And you can have an incredible impact on people around you, the world in general, if you will take the time to really focus in on some of these ideas and how you might apply them to your gifts and to your talents. So if you'll just give me this hour and your attention, I would be grateful, because this is me imparting to you something way beyond our business. Our business will come and go. It will grow. It will shrink. It will be sold. Who knows? All the years. I mean, we've got 50-year history, which is quite amazing. We're very fortunate as an organization. But everything comes and goes and fades and merges and changes into other things. But your life will be a part of whatever those changes are and however those things move and whatever decisions you're going to make. And if you know your purpose, it's a whole lot easier to move through all of that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So finding purpose. If we want to find purpose, before we step into the roadmap, we have to get control of some things that are around us, an understanding of things around us and how they impact us and how they influence us. And we have to look at that because we have to decide what needs to be rejected, what needs to be accepted, what is good and what is bad on the effects of our life, so that we can make rational decisions about finding purpose. So the first thing that we need to do is consider three contents. 3 R's. The first one being reality. We have to know what reality is. We'll dig into that. Relationship. We have to understand our relationship to everything around us, not just people. That's very important. It's the most important, our relationship to people, but our relationship to the environment, our relationship to time, our relationship to space or where we are. All of those things matter. And then we also have to take on the content of reason. We have to be reasonable. We have to understand how to reason. And that is something that is getting lost in our culture, where everything's thrown at us so quickly. It's hard to digest information properly. So, reality, knowing reality, relationships, understanding our relationships, and reason are absolute concrete blocks we have to have worked through and thought through before we can start this whole thing of designing our roadmap. So let's talk about these a little bit. Reality. Reality is the state as things are, not idealism or how we wish them to be. Reality is the state of how things are. So reality could ultimately be pushed to truth. The truth is that a water molecule has hydrogen and oxygen. That's reality. The truth is that water right out here, if we go, we can walk into it. We could drown because we breathe. These are realities. When it comes to looking at the world, what we're dealing with these days is we're dealing with people trying to give us some sense of their reality, but it not being real. It being an ideal, or it being their way of looking at the world and only looking at a small portion of the world. You know, I grew up in the South, and people that grew up in like Georgia, they didn't know there was anyone outside of Georgia. That's a lack of reality, right? In the U.S., there was this period of time where people went through, you know, no one should speak any other language other than English. Well, guess what? Most of the world doesn't speak English. They maybe do now, but certainly back then they did not. People had these false senses of reality. And even in our own lives, we can have a false sense of reality. People can lie to us. They can tell us things that aren't true. Someone in Merida yesterday said, I look like a 24-year-old. That's not reality. Made me feel good for 5 seconds, but then I saw a mirror. So we have to be careful about how we're interpreting the things around us, and we need to live in reality. We need to find truth. And that is another term that has been totally lost in the world today, this term truth. Because you're very familiar with people utilizing the term my truth. And I'm not here to step on your toes, but there's no such thing as your truth and my truth. There is only the truth. And it is important for all of us to dialogue, to debate, and to get to what is true so that we can live well and so that we can serve others well. So the whole idea of there's these different truths out there is something that is untrue. That is a story that's being told. But we need to get to what the truth is, what is real and what is not real, or what is real and what is an opinion. But the my truth really translates to opinion. My opinion is this. And we take that truth and we apply it to things because we want people to interact with us a certain way. And I think that's fair for us to want people to interact with us in a certain way, in a way that's kind and not aggressive and respectful, shows grace. And that certainly should exist, but we can't take the word truth and apply it to something that is not real when we're talking about opinion or we're talking about how we interact with each other. So in reality, how do we get to it? Well, first we find people to be real with us. I've been married for 30 years now, and there is one person on the planet who will tell me the truth in all cases, and that is my wife. Whether I want to hear it or not. She will be honest with me. You know, and she will give me hints, you know, especially like we might be in a big group or something like that, and sometimes I get a little loud and everything else. She's like, you're getting loud. Now, most other people wouldn't tell me that, right? They wouldn't say, hey, why don't you just tone it back a little bit. But she will be real with me. When I'm trying to digest an issue, a problem, she will be real with me. She's not going to tell me something and worry about whether it hurts my feelings or not. She's going to tell me what I need to hear to be able to live in reality and to deal with a problem. And so I can trust her for that. And if it's not her, it's my kids. My kids are in their 20s now, and they are very real with me. I wanted to raise critical thinkers. That was my goal in raising children, was to raise 2 critical thinkers. Well, that's become more of a problem for me because they do critically think, and they have opinions and thoughts and views of not just what's going on, but of me as well, and what they think I should be doing or how I should respond to things. So we want people to be real with us. And then we have to consider our own views. We have to be real with ourselves. A lot of people struggle with this in the world today, to be real with themselves. So we have to look in the mirror and go, yeah, I look like a 50-year-old man. Not fooling anybody. Doesn't matter. I can get Botox, it's not going to help. To be real with how we're interacting with the world and what's going on, to be honest with ourselves. And it's very hard to do, but that's a place we have to start to get to reality. I'm overreacting. I'm interpreting the situation wrong. I'm not being fair to this person. Just a variety of ways of looking at problems and relationships in order to be real. We have to consider the impact of events and our state of mind. If you want to get to reality and really understand the world around you and you're depressed, that's a very tough time to connect with reality. Depression will lie to you. It will tell you certain things. And so if you're suffering through something, you need to seek someone to be real with you or counsel so that you can work through that. Because if you're looking at the world through a depressed lens, the world looks sad, the world looks difficult, it may seem overwhelming, and that leads people to despair. And so if you're suffering something, going through something, experiencing something negative, you have to be real about that. And you have to be open to getting help or talking to others so that you can be in reality. Because your mind will sometimes lie to you and tell you you're not worth something, or you're not important, or your life doesn't matter, and those are all lies. Because you have to know your self-worth. You have a massive amount of self-worth. You are important. The world needs you. And sometimes your mind will tell you that's not true, but it does. The world needs you. The people around you need you. There is something and a purpose in your life that was designed for you to find, and without you, it's not going to get done. And so if we want to get to reality and being honest with ourselves and realizing the things that might be oppressing us and working through those things, and just always realizing that you have value, a massive amount of value. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and amazingly enough, every one of them has incredible value. And as we meet people, we discover that with everyone you meet, that they have value. So you have to review your self-sense of worth. And if you want to get to reality, there's this other thing that can get in the way. Not just the emotions like depression, but narcissism. And there are a lot of narcissists in the world. People who think they're better than everybody else. People who think that they've got it all figured out. People who think that they can only hang around people who are like them. People who think like them. And if people don't think like them and they're not like them, then they don't have value, or they're not as important. And that's a lie. And so there's a lot of narcissists walking around in the world who just don't realize none of us care about them at all because of their narcissism. So if we feel like we have that in place, and at times all of us exhibit narcissistic behaviors, that has to be dealt with too, to get to reality. So I'm going to give you a reality check. This is a hard one. No one's thinking about you. That is a very hard reality check. No one's thinking about you. So, in my life, I'll leave here. You guys are listening to me right now, but tonight at 6:05, you will not be thinking about me. Why would you be? You have things to do, things going on, family you're returning to. I'm not going to be on your mind. You'll come to work on Friday. I won't be here. You'll be processing through something. You won't be thinking about me. I wonder what Don's doing right now. Not going to happen. My wife right now is with her friends out to dinner. She's not thinking about me. I'm not on her mind right now. I know I'm important to her, but she's not thinking about me. So there are, these 8 billion people in the world. And all of us are walking around wondering what people are thinking about us. And I learned something from an agent many years ago. His name is Worth Moutre. He has an agency in Abilene. And he's one of those good old Texas boys, And we were sitting around talking, and we were talking about things like this. And he said, it's a famous saying, but I'd never heard it. He said, when I was young, I was worried about what everyone was thinking about me. And then as I got older, I didn't care whether they thought about me. And then as I've gotten even older, I realized no one's thinking about me. And it's really quite true when you consider the vastness of the world and the number of people in it, how little people are thinking about us. But there's some good news in all of that. Before I say it, when asking teenagers today what they want to be when they grow up, 60% said they want to be an influencer, which translates to, I want to be famous. I want to be TikTok famous. I want to be Instagram famous. You guys, you're too young to be on Facebook. Be Facebook famous. They didn't say things like, I would like to be an astronaut that teaches people about physics on social media. That was not their answers. There was not specifics. It was just, I want to be an influencer. And that is the problem with social media. It's like the percentage of people who are successful in social media to us when we're digesting it looks like it's lots of people. But it's just this small, tiny fraction of the world that ever gains any popularity in social media. So 0.0086, that is the number of people in the 8 billion in the world that achieve some level of fame, whether locally, state, country, or nationally. 0.0086% of the world achieves some level of fame. And even if they achieve that level of fame, it lasts for a brief period of time. I don't know about you. Do you remember Vine, when Vine came out? Yeah. Where are all those people? I mean, I saw the guy who used to always throw himself on the luggage carousel. He used to scream, sometimes I do crazy things. Ah. I don't know where that guy is today. I don't have a clue. It comes and it goes so quickly. It's just amazing. You get some popular person on social media, and then they end up on all the talk shows for 3 weeks, and then no one ever hears about them again. So even this idea of being an influencer or being famous is a fleeting thing. For some people, it does last much longer, and some people have come up with some very creative things, and some people have come up with some great ideas when it comes to that. But if the goal is fame, it's probably not going to be found in 99 point whatever that comes out to be cases of trying to become an influencer. Here's the good news with people aren't thinking about you. The good news is you can think about them. And if you're an individual who is intentional and consistent about thinking about others, you now are incredibly unique. Because most people are walking around, letting life happen to them, and wondering about what people are thinking about them, and wonder what they should do, this, that, and the other, and they are not thinking about anybody else. But if you will flip the table around and become the person who thinks about others, who's constantly following up with others, who is interested in others, now you have achieved something most people don't, and you've become unique. There's an author from the early 20th century that I am just a huge fan of, G.K. Chesterton. And Chesterton said this: how much larger your life would be if yourself could be smaller in it. If you could really look at people with common curiosity and pleasure. If you could see them walking as they are in their sunny selfishness and their viral indifference, you would begin to be interested in them, because they were not interested in you. You would break out of this tiny and tawdry theater in which your own little plot is always being played, and you would find yourself under a free sky in a street full of splendid strangers. It's an incredible quote. If you want to find purpose, the reality is people aren't thinking about you. But the reality also is you can be thinking about them. There's great value in that. Anybody do that? I have. If you go back in my old Instagram stuff, you'll probably see that. I never made duck lips. I didn't do that. But if the story, if your reality, if what you're trying to accomplish in purpose begins and ends with you, and it's just about you, then it dies with you. It doesn't go on. It doesn't have influence later. It doesn't change lives. And all of you have a wealth of different talents that are interesting, exciting, and unique to utilize. But if it's just about you and you just want the fame of it, or you want the popularity of it, or you want to be recognized for it instead of doing it for its purposes, then you really miss out. If 500 people like your latest post, that's the percentage of people in the world that liked your post. 3 6s, 625%. Not much influence at all. If I got 500 likes, I would think something was wrong. Somebody hacked my account. But talent does start with you. And if you utilize your talent or your interest or your curiosities in pushing forward with purpose, and you share that with others, or you use it to influence and help others, well, then that can be incredibly purposeful and incredibly life-changing for you and for other people. Just consider this. Mozart. Mozart was a brilliant individual who took what was going on in his head and he put it down in a technical way in music. And he put the notes to the page. And here we are hundreds of years later. Like, hey Siri, play Minuet in G.
Now playing Minuet in G by Opus Piano.
The man's been gone for hundreds of years, but that's his talent. And if you're sitting around listening to one of his songs, it might relax you, might bring you into thinking, might give you an appreciation of classical music. He's still affecting the world today. There's this term called the democracy of the dead. And the democracy of the dead means that people who put things down or who share things outside of themselves and leave them behind have a vote into how we live today. If you look at Descartes, René Descartes, or you look at Blaise Pascal, or you look at Renoir and his paintings, all these people are still thought about today and they affect society today. And they're not here. They did something well outside of themselves. Warren Buffett, billionaire, He's leaving all his money to different charities. But he's leaving something. The man's 90-something years old. He's going to die soon. Maybe. But he's leaving a practice of how to conservatively and intelligently do business, how to invest wisely. And if we'll look at what he's left behind or is leaving behind as an example, we can build businesses. We can build investments for ourselves. There's opportunity there for each of us. Guillermo del Toro. I'm not a big fan of his films, but Shape of Water didn't move me very much. But it's going to move someone, and someone's going to have that forever to look back to as an influence on how they want to design film or how they want to storytell. It's there, it's on the page, it's on the screen, and it will last. John Milton was considered the greatest writer in the English language. He wrote Paradise Lost. He said when he was in his teens, he was going to write an epic that would be equal to Homer and Dante and Virgil. And he did. Paradise Lost is taught in universities right alongside all of those other epics. His poetry is incredible. I find it incredible, so incredible that I've memorized multiple of his poems. And every once in a while I just stop and I go, "Fly, envious time, till thou run out thy race, and call on the lazy leading stepping hours whose speed is but the heavy plummet's pace, and glut thyself on what thy womb devours, which is nothing more than what is false and what is vain, mere mortal dross. So little is your gain, so little is our loss. And when, as each thing bad thou hast consumed, and last of all thy greedy self entombed, long eternity shall greet our bliss with an individual kiss. And joy shall overtake us as a flood, when all that is sincerely good and perfectly divine, with peace and love and joy forever shine about that supreme throne of him whose happy making sight alone, when once our heavenly guided souls shall climb and all this earthly grossness quit, attired with the stars we will forever sit, triumphing over death and over chance and over thee, O time." That's Milton from 1634. I memorized Lycidas' last 10 minutes. I won't do it. I make a joke sometimes at the office with Darren and I start doing it. He's like, "Stop." Milton is impacting the world today. Paradise Lost as an epic, as writers, as people who love to write, who are artistic. They are looking at this stuff still. He left something beyond himself. Diego Rivera, when it came to workers and the socialist movement and his murals around Mexico City, they're still there. You can go see them. You can stare at them. And when you look at them, there's much to contemplate, much to think through about his influences, whether it was good, whether it's bad, whether it's speaking to us today out of yesterday. But they are there for us to consider, and they'll be preserved somewhere online, even if they're lost that way. And still, when you look at art, there's so much to think through. I was amazed. I was in Paris many years ago, and I was in the Rodin Garden, and Rodin did the famous sculpture of the thinker like this. I just stood and stared at it for an hour, just trying to really contemplate what Rodin was trying to do. What Rodin had done is he had made Dante, and Dante is sitting over the gates of hell in the Divine Comedy, and he's looking down and he's thinking about what he's seen. It's still a powerful statue. It can still draw us to think and to respond, even though he is not here. Mother Teresa set an example, not something to the page, but an act. She was willing to go live and be in the slums in India, to be a part of a impoverished life. And she left an example that fortunately someone was able to communicate out about how we can serve others. And so her legacy lives beyond by the action that she took. We can all do things like that. And while we might not gain worldly fame in what we do, we can influence many, many people in the things and the activities that we do if we find our purpose. Okay. We know we got to live in reality. Now we got to consider relationships and our relationships to all that is around us. Generational differences. We have to consider that. My mom had this saying that she said to me quite a bit when I grew up, which is, you are who you are because of where you were when. You are who you are because of where you were when. Space and time matter in designing us. We all have different personalities, attributes, things that have happened in our lives, good, bad, ugly, because of where we were when. And we have to deal with those relationships and work through those relationships and decide what is a negative impact, what is a positive impact. What can I use that I've learned to apply to finding purpose? What do I need to get rid of and purge out of my life that is holding me back because I'm dwelling on it too much? So my generation, I'm Gen X. And my generation, our parents weren't home. Our parents were at work every day, and when we got home, there was no one there. So when I was 14, that's how I found my father's liquor cabinet. There was no one there to catch me. You just take the vodka bottle and fill it back up with water. Don't teach your kids those tricks. But my generation saw things that your generations did not. For example, the fall of the Berlin Wall. That was a major event for my generation, where communism was rising and rising and everyone was fighting against it with everything they had. And so this was the example of its failure. The Challenger disaster, when the space shuttle in 1987 blew up, I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school, and I was in the library watching it on TV. It was scary. 3 Mile Island, we had a nuclear meltdown in Pennsylvania. And now, all of a sudden, that seemed like an amazing danger for all these nuclear plants that we had. The Rodney King beating, when Rodney King got pulled over in Los Angeles and the police just beat the crap out of him. And it was on TV, and we all saw it. It was very impactful on life in the US. The Watergate scandal, when the files were stolen from the Democratic headquarters and the president had to resign. Black Monday, when the stock market completely crashed in October of 1987. Desert Storm in 1991, I was in college. I thought I was going to have to go to war. They were talking about a draft. I was preparing to go fight a war. Something that your generation has not had as much to be concerned about. Ronald Reagan got shot. We thought the president, that wouldn't happen in modern times, but Ronald Reagan got shot, and that was unsettling. Personal computers. When I was in college, we didn't have personal computers. Not till my junior year did the college have a computer for me to sit at. I learned DBase 123 before I'd ever sat at a computer. I learned how to do DOS programming before I ever got to sit at a computer. I learned Pascal language before I could ever get to sit at a computer because they didn't have them. They were too expensive. I learned Word in its early forms before I ever sat at a computer. We had a textbook with pictures of screenshots. It's ridiculous. But my junior year, I was in a journalism class, and it was the first time I put eyes on a Macintosh. And I thought it was so cool, just a box, But my generation we didn't grow up on computers. It's not how we did work. And now they don't even teach cursive writing in school anymore, because why do you need that? You're going to use a computer. That's how everything's going to be done, if we even do that in the future. ChatGPT might change everything. Brian and I were talking about that earlier. We had major corporate layoffs, which made the corporate world seem very dangerous and unreliable to my generation. We had an energy crisis in the 70s. We couldn't find fuel. Sounds kind of familiar. We had the Jonestown mass suicide in English Guiana. where hundreds of people drank Kool-Aid and killed themselves because they believed some guy was God. That had a major impact on my generation. So, I want you to consider, Rafa made a very good case yesterday when we did this exercise in Merida, and he said, well, what about the good stuff that happened? And then I had to think about it. I go, oh, I'm having trouble thinking about that. About the good stuff. The good stuff usually, makes us better. The good stuff was that after the Vietnam War and after Desert Storm, things kind of calmed down and the world became what seemed to be a safer place. But I want you to consider this, and I want you guys to work together. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. You've got it there in front of you. And I want you to think about your relationship to space and time. Your relationship, your generation's relationship, and the events that have probably affected you in some way. In your life, and the way you think, and what frightens you, and what excites you. And you guys kind of share that, work on it together. Take about 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask you for some answers, and I can call on anybody, so make sure you do something, all right? Think about the events in your generation. Those things are things you have relationships with. And if you want to find your purpose in life, you have to consider your relationship to those things. And you've mentioned a lot of what I have here, but your generations, for the most part, Anna, you're a little closer to mine, but you have lived digital lives. I did not grow up with a digital life. I went outside and rode my bike. We didn't have gaming. We got Atari somewhere in the 80s, where basically it was just, like watching a little figure move across the screen. It was nothing. It didn't paralyze us with like, oh, I want to spend all my time doing that. But you are living digital lives and the way you get information. You're living in a post-Christian world. It's very different than the world I grew up in. In the world I grew up in, everyone considered themselves to be Christian. In a post-Christian world, that is not the case. More people consider themselves not to be than people who do. And that changes the way people look at the world, and that changes the way that you digest information, and it changes the way you interact with others. And so you grew up in a post-Christian world. You're more fluid. You're much more adaptable to change and to seeing things differently than my generation or the boomers were. And we're very stuck in our ways, and we think, everything's wrong, and you'll feel that way too when you're my age. But our generations were very solid, and just there was a plan and a way of doing things. Like you had no thought when I was growing up that you wouldn't get married. That was just what you did. That's just how it's going to be. And now there's a lot more thought before you're just going to go and get married. It's like, well, no, I want to build a career, or I want to see the world, or I want to invest my time in this. I don't want to invest my time in a relationship. Those were not even concepts that we had when I was growing up. If you just so much as vocalized something like that, somebody would have thought you were crazy. So your generation's much more fluid, accepts change, much more curious. But you do have something that I didn't, and that's information overload. So much coming at you as you were growing up that I did not have, because we had the newspaper. I mean, literally, it was dropped on your doorstep in the morning, and you had to sit and read it. And so, very different. But part of what all this has caused in your generation is a lot more lonely than mine. My generation was not a lonely generation. We had friends and lots of interaction and communicated and called on the phone, phones that had cords that were in our house. And just very different. And that doesn't mean these things are inherently bad. Technology's always been progressing, and it's always different for every generation, but it does impact you and changes your relationship to the world. And so you have to consider that relationship if you want to move forward. And then you have to consider your relationship with others. I mean, truly, do you feel like you have good relationships with other people? Negative relationships with other people? Are you forgiving? Are you not forgiving? Are they forgiving? Are they not forgiving? How do you interact with other people? How do you treat others? Are you a narcissist? Are you not a narcissist? Are they narcissists? I mean, you have to consider relationship with others as well, and what you want that to look like. Because if you're going to find purpose, you have to create good relationships with people. So our relationship with space and time, our relationship with other people. And the third R is reason. We have to do good reasoning. And if we don't know reality, and we're not willing to live in reality, and even the things that upset us or that we don't like or that don't conform, looking at those things, being willing to dig on those, and then looking at the relationship to space and time and people, and do it in a reasonable way, it's going to be hard to find purpose. So we have to use good reasoning. And the way you do good reasoning is by asking questions. That's where good reasoning comes from. Asking good questions. If I want to know whether someone is truly engaged in a particular job, whether they are engaged in a particular relationship, whether they are truly excited about a particular interest or hobby, it's not the things they tell me that really help me understand them. It is the questions they ask. And one of the things that I challenge people in my generation with is to learn the questions of your generation so that we can, at some level, help guide you into finding a purpose in life by understanding the questions that you have, instead of just sitting with the questions we had in our generation. The best way to understand people is to understand their questions, to hear their questions, to listen to their questions. If someone's asking very detailed questions about a particular subject, you know they're interested. They've done some research. They're trying to put it all together. But if they're very generic questions, well, then you know there's not a lot of thought going on. And it's so important, especially when you're trying to engage with others about questions. We say it so quickly to each other. How you doing? I'm fine. Do we really mean the question, how are you doing? No, how are you doing? The questions matter. And if somebody knows that you're truly interested in how they're doing, well, it changes the whole dynamic of the relationship just off the question. But to be honest with ourselves, we've got to ask good questions. The questions are more important than the answers. The last thing in reason, good questions, and then we have to understand paradox. Now, this is something that my generation, as well as yours, has not done so well with. Understanding paradox. By not understanding paradox, we've misjudged things and people. We've been unprepared. We've acted surprised by things that have happened in our lives. But if we will dig in and truly understand that the world is full of paradoxes and that we are also in ourselves a paradox, then we can reason better. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is John D. Rockefeller was one of the leaders of the Industrial Revolution in the US, incredibly creative, built the railroads, all kinds of things. He did it on the backs of other people by laboring them in harsh and horrible ways, by working children. I mean, he was a scandalous person. At the same time, he was giving more money to museums, libraries, caring for the poor with his money than anyone probably ever has in time when you consider percentage of their value that they put to that. So he's known as one of the great philanthropists. So this man who's known as one of the great philanthropists in the US is also one of the biggest scoundrels in the US. That's a paradox. How can he be doing so much evil, yet doing so much good? And if we will be real with ourselves, and if we want to reason properly, and we want to be honest with ourselves in the questions we ask, we also have to understand that we have the ability to do great good, and we have the ability to do great evil within ourselves. It's the same simple things. You walk into a room, someone's there, you're like, oh, Anna, I just really appreciate you. You're just really so nice, you're so kind, and I just really think you're great. I don't know why she'd wear that purple thing, or that pink vest that she's got on. It's just, I wouldn't wear that. That's paradoxical behavior. You know, being kind and then the second turning around and doing something different. And every one of us is capable of that paradox. to do great good and to do great evil, and sometimes to do both almost at the same time. There's plenty of show-offs out there that are horrible people that go and give money to good causes so that they look good and so that somebody says something good about them. It doesn't make them good. It's a paradox. And so we have to understand paradox, and that we can be a paradox and deal with that in ourselves so that we can stay true to our purpose. So reality, relationships, reason are all going to be ways that we guide ourselves and set the concrete foundation to move through the roadmap. So let me give you an idea of a roadmap. There's plenty. This is just an idea. Step one is the reasoning. Ask honest questions and give honest answers. There are dishonest questions. Agents give me dishonest questions all the time. They'll say to me, so how is my loss ratio? Which means what they should have asked is, if my loss ratio were lower, could I get a better commission? That's the honest question. The dishonest question is to get me to say something before they give me the purpose of why they're asking it. So there are dishonest questions. We can be dishonest with ourselves in so many ways. But if we will ask ourselves good, solid, honest questions, was my behavior today really the example that I am trying to set? Were there things that I did today that absolutely are counter to the purpose that I'm trying to live or how I want to treat others? I mean, be honest with yourself and give those honest answers. And that is true with the people you deal with as well. Don't guise your questions to try and drive someone to your answer. Really ask the clear question to try and get the answer that is the truth, the reality. So as you start this process, start asking yourself questions about your talent, about what you enjoy doing, about who's around you, about the things that you see that are good, about the things that you see are bad, about where you think you could apply a talent, about what talent you have. Ask the people around you, do you think this is a talent of mine? What do you think my talents are? What has been beneficial? And get the people around you to help with those honest questions and those honest answers. After I went to a little church by my house for many years, and I still have a number of friendships from it. And many years later, I was sitting around at a table with a bunch of these guys, and I said, hey, when you guys first met me, what did you think of me? And I won't tell you the exact quote, but I'll use the term jackass. Oh, I thought you were a jackass. Why is that? Oh, you just, you come to church with your suit on all the time and, just look like you were stuck up. Well, I wore a suit to church because my father would beat me as a child if I didn't. So I just kind of kept doing that. And also, I was a nerdy kid, so I'd always wore a suit to school. So I know, that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I've got pictures. I carried a briefcase, too. Not really. But I really thought about what they said. And so from what they said, I stopped wearing suits to church. In fact, I started wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Still do, for the most part, today. Because I didn't want to come across as pretentious. And if the first visual somebody thinks of me is like, look at that little short, stuck-up guy. That's not what I want, right? I want to be approachable, and I want to be reasonable, and I don't want to be thought of that way. So my friends were honest with me, so I could change. I could make a choice about it. And it's a simple thing, and it seems minor, but those things build up over time. So honest questions and honest answers so that you can think deeply. Here's a question you can start with, and it's on your page. We're not going to spend time on this today, but I hope that you will. This is not just the question to ask yourself or the way to ask it. It's just some way to ask it. I exist to desired impact. Or you can ask this globally too. What do we exist for? We exist to blank. In order to serve an audience. Now, maybe your purpose in life is not to serve an audience. Again, this is just a way to ask the question. But start with things like this, and then be honest with yourself as you work through it. This will really help you find what you care about and what's important to you. Number 2, take ownership of your life. It's your life. Some bad stuff has happened to you. Some bad stuff has happened to all of us at different levels. Some people have experienced some horrific things, seen horrific things. That may be true for your life. You may have lost people that are so important to you. There just may be a wealth of negative stories. You may have been absolutely mistreated, horribly. And that is sad, and that is a shame that it exists in the world, but it does. And if those bad things haven't happened to you, they probably will somewhere down the line. But don't go around blaming everyone. Use what's happened to you to help someone else. That's when you stop blaming and you start helping. You don't play the victim. Being the victim is not going to help you find purpose in life. You may be a victim. It may be very real, what you've been through. But if you will flip that around and help people who also have been victims, that is life-changing for people. Don't infuse the past unless you're going to use it to do something powerful. But don't let the past drag you down. The past is in the past. It's going to be there. What happened has happened. You can't fix it, you can't change it. Whether you did something good, you did something bad, whether it was something hurtful, it's not going to change. It's happened. What do you do with it? Use it if you can to help find your purpose, as opposed to letting it drag you down and keep you seeing from reality and what you could accomplish. And don't live in fear. I'm going to say this again. You're going to die. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen. I mean, certainly we've all thought about it. I've thought, like, what's it going to be like? I'm going to be like, oh, this is it? There's just no telling. We don't know. So don't live in fear of it. It's going to happen. What you need to do is utilize the time you've got. Apply what's going on in the time that you have. Don't live in fear. Number 3, focus on what you have, not what you don't have. If your purpose is, I will do something if I get this, or I will do something if I make this, or I will do something if I earn this, you will always be waiting. If you find your purpose, find ways to move forward now, to do something now. Don't wait for things to align. Start trying something, putting something together, doing something simple. Start writing about what it is you care about. Start researching, but do something other than just waiting for things to change. So never use the term, I'll get started when. The time to start is now. Your time is limited. It's running out. After today, you have one less day. So don't wait to get started if you're finding what it is you believe you need to be pushing forward with in life. Write your story. I mean this literally. Write your story. Write about your childhood. Write about where you grew up. Write about the things that happened to your generation. Write about what happened in your family. Write about the grandparent that's gone now that infused something into your life that was so positive that really helped you. Write about the experiences you've been through, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and put it on paper. It will help you reflect. It will help you think through it. You will have thoughts about it you've never had before because you're taking the time to write it. Writing, whether you're good at it or not, is powerful. You don't have to be a great writer. If it's not your shtick, it's okay. Do it anyway. You'll be amazed, once you get this down on the page, you might have a bestseller. No telling. Each of you has a unique story. It's an important story. It's a good story. So put it on the page. And then write, at the end of that, where you see things going. What your hopes are, what you want to be working on, how you want to influence others. Make that a part of the story. Write a mission statement. So after you've taken the time to write your story, to think things through, to look at reality, to consider the relationships around you, to reason through it all, to think about your talents, to ask honest questions and to get honest answers and honest feedback from those around you, and looking at yourself in the mirror and walking through it, and write your mission statement. What are you on the planet to do in the short period of time that you're on the planet? And put it down in a mission statement. Companies do that. How much more important are you than a company? Companies write these big mission statements about what they want to accomplish and how they want to influence the world, from REI to Patagonia and North Face and ExxonMobil, and all of them have these mission statements. They're not as important as you are. They are elements that are here because of us. So your life is much more important than that. And it's worth the time to decide what your mission statement is and to put it on paper. And then after you do those things, you've walked down the trail, take your first action. Do something with it. Don't just sit around and go, okay, I got my mission statement. Day one, figure out what step you can take, what little thing you can do with what you have and where you are right now to try and fulfill that purpose, to try and live that out. I can't tell you what those things are. I'm happy to banter with you with honest questions and honest answers. I'm happy to share experiences if you want me to about things that I've seen over the years, but I can't get there for you. And I can't push you to it. I have a number of friends of mine who are academics, they're professors at major universities. And I admire them so much because I'm not an academic. It's something that when I look back at my life, I go, well, that would have been a fun path, but that wasn't the path. But I love to sit and talk with these people and to listen to them. And they've shared with me something that's very similar in their experiences, and that is this. If they start a semester with all the courses that they are teaching that semester, and 2 people in all of those classes, not just 2 in each class, but 2 people from all of their classes are taking an interest in the material and are asking questions of them and really trying to do well in the course, they consider that a successful semester. Hundreds of people in their classes, and their hope for a good semester is 2 interested people. So I will tell you what I consider success from today. If one of you takes the time to follow this roadmap, to put it to the page, get a mission statement, and to take an action, and shares it with me somewhere down the line, today was worth it. If one of you does that. If 3 of you do it, it's miraculous. If all of you do it, I will retire. This is your life. It's no game. It's just not a game. And I don't want you to wander around like most of the people around you, aimlessly waiting for life to happen to them is a lousy way to live. You get to the end and you go, oh, there's so much I wish I'd have done. And there's no time to go back and try and find it again. The time is now. You are important. The world needs you. There's 8 billion people out there, all of them needing help with something. All of us need help. I need help with lots of things in my life. And I'm so thankful for the people that have found their purpose that can help me with that. When I bump into those people, it's just so helpful. I got a text today from a friend of mine. He lives in Paris. He's a historian. He's a philosophy major. And he was just checking on me today. He was thinking about me. That is something powerful. And not only that, he's sharing with me an article that he found about a particular philosopher that interests him. And he's teaching me something because he has a gift, because he knows his mission in life. And his mission in his life is to educate. And he's doing that one-off with individuals. And I'm just one of the fortunate benefactors of that, because he's discovered his mission in life and his purpose. And he's willing to take me, selfish me, walking around, worrying about my things today when it comes to putting together reinsurance presentations. And this guy's thinking about me. And if you flip the cards around and become that person, the person that's thinking about others and utilizing your mission in life to do that, well, that is when life really kicks into gear. And all the stuff that happens to you along the way just becomes things that happen in life, but you keep plowing forward to that mission in spite of the difficulties, the obstacles, health, dangers, conflict, relationships, and everything else that's going to happen. Those things are going to be a part of your life, but you're plugging forward towards that mission. It really gives life purpose and meaning, and I want that for you more than anything else. More than I want a better loss ratio, more than I want more sales, I want that for you. I had a group, when I was 18 years old, I was at CBS Radio and I was put in charge of the interns. So I was 18 and most of the interns were older than me. But I'd been around the station a while, and so they trusted me with putting them in their little sections and doing the things. And I knew nothing about managing people. Not a thing about managing people. I was reading, books and trying to figure it all out. But I made this commitment. I told the interns that first year, I said, I want to help you this summer to introduce you to the industry, maybe introduce you to some people that might be able to help you. I can't help you. I'm just 18. I don't know anything yet. But, I know this guy who's, knows these people here, this, and there. I go, but what I want from you, I told the interns, is I want you to commit to continue to communicate with me no matter where you end up in your career. So that, if I've had an impact, I'll know it. And so I can encourage you in whatever way I can, or help you in whatever way I can as we go through life. And I'm very fortunate to say of that first group of interns I have, I'm still in a relationship with all of those people today. And some of them have been much more successful than me, if you want to call it from a worldly standpoint. And I'm just so impressed that they were able to do what they did, and with their talent and their skill. Some of them had just much bigger IQs than me. I'm never going to be a rocket scientist. Not going to happen. Don't have that skill. But some of them have these engineering skills that they stepped out of the media world and stepped over to that, just like I stepped out of the media world into the insurance world, et cetera. And to be able to be in relationship with people and to know how they're doing and what they're doing, and they're fulfilling what they wanted to in life, making those connections mean so much. I want to encourage you to do that with your peers here today. As you go through life, you won't always work together. It's just not how it's going to be. Life changes, business changes, structures change, all of that. But if you find your mission and you're plowing forward, it'll always be purpose-filled, you'll always be thrilled about it, and you'll always be helping others. So consider that, will you? I hope one of you will share something with me in a few months. Have a good night, guys. Appreciate you.